All right, so today we're going to continue on with our look at judgment, decisions, and reasoning. So what is the way that we're supposed to reason? What is the way that we actually do reason? And what is the disconnect between the two? So what we have in store for today, we're going to take a look at the results of the reflecting on confirmation bias assignment, specifically part one that was designed to basically measure confirmation bias for the issue of gender pay and the gender pay gap. We're then going to take a look at normative, introduce that new term prescriptive versus descriptive decision making. We're going to take a look at the pirate game. We're going to take a look at the dollar auction and see just what kind of implications specifically the dollar auction has to explain some behavior. We're going to see a situation where acting completely rationally can actually lead to very irrational behaviors. All right, so we completed an assignment on confirmation bias. So we'll cover that right now. So confirmation bias is a kind of natural tendency that we all have. And it's our natural tendency to, number one, seek out information that conforms to our own beliefs, and also to interpret that information in a way that conforms to our own beliefs. So this is something that is very important to understand, very important to be aware of, because again, it's a natural tendency that we have as human beings, and it's something that is not beneficial, something that we need to overcome, especially as psychologists. So the key here is that it conforms to our own beliefs. So we look for information that is telling us what we already believe, and then we interpret information in a way that saves our beliefs from being challenged. And just to kind of show you that this is just a natural way of doing things, one of the greatest examples of confirmation bias in today's society is that idea of the echo chamber. So Facebook, Reddit, so many of these social media sites are basically designed to facilitate confirmation bias, where people will only follow information or only read information that conforms their beliefs, and they will ignore all other information that challenges their beliefs. And not surprisingly, we've seen the rise of some some beliefs that were almost gone and now are coming back into the mainstream. So conspiracy theories, if you look hard enough, you can find evidence that conforms to your own belief for a conspiracy theory, regardless of what the conspiracy theory is. So again, ignoring counter evidence has led to a widespread belief in conspiracy theories. I think it got so bad that YouTube had to shut down conspiracy theory channels because the spread of disinformation was just getting too extreme. In terms of racism and sexism, confirmation bias is one of the ways that is maintained. Racism is maintained in the face of counter evidence. So if you have sexist attitudes towards women, for example, you can always find a woman that conforms to that belief. And then you take that as evidence and you ignore all the other women that don't conform to that belief. So for example, if you believe that women make inferior bosses, women should not be in positions of management at in places of work, I guarantee you there are horrible female bosses out there, just because there are horrible bosses out there. So in a confirmation bias, you would ignore all the wonderful female bosses and confirm your own belief by saying, well, look at this one, horrible female boss, and that can maintain racism and sexism. Pseudoscience as well, the sort of flat earth society, anti-vaccination movement that's been going on has been perpetuated by people looking out for information that conforms to their own belief, and then interpreting other information in a way that also conforms to their own beliefs. So if you follow the anti-vaccination movement, one of the arguments that they have is that any evidence that is pro-vaccination, that indicates the benefits of vaccination, has been fabricated by big pharma and big medicine, and that is just a way of doing a confirmation bias so that it continues to conform to their own beliefs. And then finally, climate change denial. You can always find a cold day in winter. And throughout this last winter, you could know who was the climate change deniers on Twitter, for example, because as soon as that cold day hit, they would tweet out something like, well, it's minus 30 degrees in Minnesota. What happened to global warming? You know, hashtag fake, hashtag counter evidence. No, it's not counter evidence. You can always find a cold day, but you interpret it in a way that says, you know what, that conforms to my beliefs. That's the way I'm going to interpret it. So it's a growing problem now, one that we have to try to counteract. And then also, importantly for us, is it limits progress in psychology. It limits the progression towards the truth by holding on to old beliefs longer than we should by ignoring counter evidence. And if you look at the greatest leaps in psychology, the greatest leaps came when the established theories, the established truths were proven wrong, right? So the greatest leaps came in psychoanalysis when Freud said, you know what, proven belief is that we have access to all our memories. Maybe we don't. You know, and now I'm going to interpret, you know, and interpret the evidence in a way that kind of supports that. So they make a great leap. Behaviorism comes around. You know, proven ideas that we can measure mental states, and we have access to mental states. Behaviorism said maybe we don't, right? So they kept basically saying maybe we've got it wrong, and those are always the biggest leaps in psychology. And if you have confirmation bias, you will never be convinced that you got it wrong. So what we did in this confirmation bias part 1 assignment is you were randomly assigned to one of two articles. You either received an article that was that provided evidence that the gender pay gap is explained by the choices that men and women make. So it's not sexism. It has to do with the behavior of men and women in the workforce. And then there was the second article was one that provided evidence that the gender pay gap is due to sexism. Is not due to the behaviors of men and women, not the choices that they make, but is actually due to sexism. So then the question that you were asked before you read the article and after you read the article was just how much do you believe that the gender pay gap is due to sexism in the workforce versus choices that women made. And what we did is I measured the percent that you believed that the gender pay gap was due to sexism. So 70% sexism, 30% choices, 90% sexism, 10% choices, 0% sexism, 100% choices. So we measured the sexism before reading the articles. And then you remember you had a second question that measured the percent sexism opinion after reading the articles. And now we're going to get to those results. All right, so here we have on the x-axis the percent sexism before reading the article. So this is, again, how much do you believe the gender pay gap is due to sexism in the workforce? And then on the y-axis here, first we're going to have sexism before reading the articles, and then we're going to have sexism after reading the articles. So we're starting on percent sexism before reading the articles, so I can put this graph up here. So this is the range of individuals, I should mention, this is a range of individuals that read the choices article. So before reading this article that provided evidence that the gender pay gap is due to the choices that women make, this was the range of the percent that we believed gender pay gap was due to sexism. So we had a low of 20%, we had a high of 100%. And if the article was completely ignored, so if you did not even read the article, for example, then this is the line that we would expect you later on. So if you did not change your opinion at all, you would stay on this line. So that's what we have it there for. So we're now going to see what happened to the percent sexism after reading that article. And here's the change. So you can see that the article did affect people's percent of sexism, their belief in how much sexism is due, how much the gender pay gap is due to sexism. So now we get to the part about confirmation bias. And if there was a confirmation bias, what we would expect is we would expect the greatest change in, or the greatest drop in the percent sexism belief to be amongst people who had already believed that it was due to choices, right? We would expect the greatest drop here amongst the individuals that already believe that the pay gap is due to choices. And we would expect the lowest drop over here, because confirmation bias, if you already believe that it's due to sexism, you would have a likelihood to ignore this article and just say things like, well, the science is bad, the methodology was inconsistent, who are these people anyway, do they know what they're talking about? So we should see a very small drop here. We should see a very large drop here if we had confirmation bias running rampant. Very pleased to say that's actually the opposite of what we had. So somebody's been practicing their critical thinking. It's nice to see, but it is, I mean, this is exactly what we want, right? We want to have an open, critical mind, so you don't just accept it and say, well, I'm just going to take it, at face value. You want to be open, you want to be critical, and this is literally the opposite of confirmation bias. Confirmation bias, the line should be like this. This is actually the opposite of confirmation bias. So it was a sort of restore faith in humanity moment. Somebody has been teaching everybody in here well about critical thinking. That was really nice to see. So that was a choices article. What about the sexism article? So what about the individuals that read the article that provided evidence that this is due to sexism, that women actually behave the same, and yet even when they do, they still don't come out as well as males do in terms of pay. So once again, here's the line. If you just completely ignored the article, same opinion before as after. What would happen in this case? Well, again, if the confirmation bias is going to happen, then these individuals down here, they should not change at all. They should be completely ignoring this article, saying, well, the science is shoddy, the subjects lied, something like that. And we should see the greatest change up here, where you interpret the information and say, oh yeah, I knew it all along, and now I know it even more. And once again, very nicely, we see the opposite effect once more. So we see the greatest change occurring amongst the individuals that did not believe that it was sexism, believed it was choices before reading the article, and then that change gets actually less and less amongst the individuals that already believed it was sexism. So both cases, on both sides, we have anti-confirmation bias, which was really nice to see. So keep doing what you're doing. Become a little bit more aware about confirmation bias. I'll mention one last thing about it. But it was really nice to see that, for the most part, students in this class are critically thinking about information. And if they are evaluating the information as coming from a good source, being methodologically sound, they are willing to change their opinion, change their own personally held belief, which is a great skill and trait to have, especially in psychology. All right, so one last thing that I wanted to mention is that one of the questions in the second part was the question about did you check to see where the article came from? Did you check the source of the article? And this is something that I do myself. This is something that I highly, highly recommend you do, because most of what you sort of get introduced to, especially these days, is going to be a secondhand source. It's going to be a news article about a study. It's going to be somebody's blog post about a study. It's going to be secondhand material. So one of the things that we need to do as critically thinking psychologists, and to help avoid confirmation bias, is do things like check the article. Does it come from good sources? Does the evidence that it claimed comes from good sources? So if you were reading the article and you did not click on one of the links to take you to the original article, you didn't Google the original article, make sure that you get into that habit, because again, words can be twisted, truths can be twisted. People writing these posts might have their own confirmation bias and interpret the original material in their own way. So be on the lookout. So what I did is, for each of these studies, I actually uploaded the original papers. And it's very important to do this, because sometimes you will notice that there's evidence that maybe the sources that you're looking at, maybe the sources where this evidence comes from, aren't necessarily the best sources. So for example, in this one, if you took a look at at the Harvard study, right? So I like that that's front and center in a lot of these articles. It's a Harvard study. It comes from Harvard. Harvard is great. You know, Harvard is one of the top schools. So they lead with that Harvard study. If you clicked on the article, you would notice that it is currently an unpublished article. It's still a work in progress. I think it's somebody's research project, might be somebody's PhD thesis, but it is not yet published. What that means is that it has not yet been vetted, it has not yet been peer reviewed, it has not yet been read by critically thinking reviewers who are going to say, this is not good, this is good, this needs to be improved, this argument is a little weak. It hasn't gone through that process that makes science publications go to that next level. So that for me was a red flag in this case. If I was reading this article and I saw that it's still from a work in progress, I would weigh that evidence as being less convincing than if it was in a peer-reviewed published publication. And then for this one as well, one of the reasons I chose these two is because they don't come from the strongest points of evidence. This one over here was from a nonprofit organization called Catalyst. And it's a nonprofit organization that works and fights for women's issues, including gender pay. So right off the bat, they weren't hiding it at all, but right off the bat, you know that they're going to be biased towards evidence, towards research that shows that the gender pay gap is due to sexism. So again, don't dismiss it outright, but it's a red flag. It kind of comes up and says, oh, this study, you know, promoting sexism as explanation came from a women's group that is a nonprofit organization. That calls it into question the same way that if you read an article that said Volvo, safest car, on the road, and it came from Volvo Incorporated, you would kind of say, well, let me take that with a grain of salt. Same thing here. So take-home message for this, I'll say two things. Number one, much less confirmation bias than there is for, let's face it, people that probably haven't been educated on critical thinking. So that's awesome to see. Keep that going. Second take home, whenever you're confronted with information, if it's important to you, if it's something that you're like, well, you know what, this is going to be incorporated into my beliefs, or this is psychology, this is part of what I do, always, always, always track down that original source and weigh it accordingly to how convincing or how reputable that original information is. All right, any questions on this before we move on to decisions and judgment making? All right, so what we're going to talk about now is we're going to keep going on with the idea of normative reasoning and descriptive reasoning, but we're going to introduce one other term because you'll see it pop up in your chapters. So normative reasoning, again, is how humans should reason. What should we do? Descriptive reasoning is what we actually do. So it's a description of how we reason. So normative reasoning is what's the correct answer, what's the right thing. Descriptive reasoning is what do we actually do? What's the answer that a human would come up with? Normative reasoning is based on philosophy, logic, mathematics. It's basically if you gave a computer this problem to solve, what would the computer do? Descriptive reasoning, again, is based on our behaviors. So we have prescriptive reasoning now as well. And I just wanted to point out that they're exactly the same thing as normative reasoning. It's just two terms for the same idea. What should we do? One is normative. They termed it normative. The other one, prescriptive. It's like a prescription. It's what you should do. So just bear that in mind as you go forward in your psychology career. If you read about normative reasoning, descriptive reasoning, prescriptive reasoning, just be aware that normative and prescriptive are exactly the same thing. All right, so I bring this up because apparently in decision making, you don't call it normative decision making, you call it prescriptive decision making, but it's exactly the same thing. So again, prescriptive decision making, how should we make decisions? What's the rational way to make a decision? What's the correct decision to make? Once again, based on philosophy, logic, and mathematics. Descriptive decision making, bless you, is how humans actually make their decisions. What do we actually do? And that's based on our behaviors. All right, so to illustrate the difference between prescriptive and descriptive, we are now going to try another challenge. This is called the Pirate Booty Challenge. So what we're going to do is I'm going to describe the situation. And then what I would like you to do is I want you to jot down 2 different numbers or 2 different solutions. One of them I want you to just totally base on feeling, right? What intuitively would your solution to this challenge be? The other one, I want you to try to come up with the prescriptive solution, come up with a sort of logical based solution, and we'll see if we can get differences between the two. And we'll see if anybody can come up with a prescriptive solution. Spoiler alert, it's challenging. All right, so here's the situation. You got 5 pirates, Pirate A, Pirate B, C, D, and E. And these pirates, they find 100 gold coins. And they must decide how to distribute them, right? So we got 100 gold coins, we got 5 pirates. They got to decide how to allot this treasure. Now, they do have a strict order of seniority. A is superior to B, B is superior to C, C is superior to D, and D is superior to E. So there's a strict hierarchy, the strict ordering.
A superior to all of them?
A is superior to all of them. Yep. So A is the head of the entire gang. B is in charge of everybody except A. C is above everybody. C is below everybody except D and E. So it's a strict hierarchy level that they work under. All right, so the pirates' world rules of distribution are thus. So these are the rules that they follow to distribute their loot. The most senior pirate should propose a distribution of coins. So Pirate A is going to say, you know what, here's how we're going to distribute the 100 coins. I'm going to take this many, B, you get this many, C, you get this many, all the way down. The pirates then, including the proposer, Pirate A, vote on whether to accept the distribution. So it's going to be all those in favor say aye, all those opposed say nar, and they're going to vote on the distribution. If the proposed allocation is approved by a majority of the voters, so if they get 3 out of 5, or if it's a tie vote, and that's going to come up in just a bit. So if it's a majority or it's a tie vote, then it happens. So in this case, if they get 3 out of 5 pirates saying aye, then Pirate A says, good, here's the allocation. And even the other 2 pirates who are grumbling, they are forced to take the allocation. However, if the allocation gets downvoted, if it does not pass, then the proposer is thrown overboard from the pirate ship and dies. So if Pirate A says, oh, this is how we're going to allocate it, and 3 of these pirates vote against her, well, then they take her, they throw her over, she dies, and the next most senior pirate makes a new proposal to begin the system again. So then it falls to Pirate B, and they'll ask Pirate B, what do you want to allocate the money as? And in this case, this is where the tie comes up. When it's down to 4, 2 votes will carry the allocation. So a tie or a majority is enough to carry the allocation. And the last kind of part we need here, pirates base their decisions on these 3 factors. So these are highly rational pirates. First of all, each pirate wants to survive. So that is the top level consideration for each pirate. They want to survive. They're not going to propose an allocation that's going to get them thrown overboard. Secondly, each pirate wants to maximize the number of gold coins that they receive. So they're greedy, right? If they can get more in the next allocation, they'll downvote the current allocation. So they want to maximize the number of gold coins they receive. And then finally, each pirate would prefer to throw another overboard if all of the results would otherwise be equal. So if you were given, let's say, 20 coins on one allocation, and you thought to yourself, you know what, I'm going to get 20 coins on the next allocation anyway, you will downvote your current 20 coins, try to throw the proposer overboard if you get the same amount of coins. However, this is overridden by the second rule. So if they were saying to themselves, you know what, I'm going to get 20 coins this allocation, and if I downvote the proposer, I'll get 19 the next allocation, they'll say to themselves, you know what, that loss of 1 gold coin isn't enough for me to try to murder my captain. So they want to maximize the number of gold coins. So they want to stay alive, number 1. They want to maximize the number of gold coins they receive, number 2. And lastly, if all things are equal, they're murderous pirates, they'll try to vote to throw somebody overboard. Again, if all other results would be equal. All right, so your challenge. What is the allocation of gold coins that would allow Pirate A to survive while maximizing her take? So put yourself in Pirate A's shoes and ask yourself, what allocation do I need to do amongst my pirates? Yourself included, you want to give yourself some coins in order to maximize your take. And you must survive, and you're trying to get the most gold coins that you can. All right, so we will begin the clock on this. I'll give you, let's do maybe 2 minutes per solution. So solution number 1, come up with an allocation that just feels like it'll probably work. Again, you're trying to maximize your gold intake, but try to come up with an allocation that you feel is going to work. And then for the second solution, try to come up mathematically with an allocation that will maximize your take.
How many coins are there total?
There are 100 gold coins in total.
Does the leader get to vote as well as the other?
Yes, so don't forget that the leader also votes. So you can assume that you're going to vote yes to your own allocation because you don't want to throw yourself overboard. You're not suicidal pirates. And be sure in your answer, write down how much are you giving yourself, your pirate A, how much does B get, how much does C get, how much does D get, and how much does E get. And so a couple more minutes to work out the solutions. A few more seconds. Make sure that you have the intuitive one. Said at the very least, if you can't figure out the mathematical one, you have your intuitive solution. All right, so we'll take a look at the answers. But before we do that, we'll just kind of do a show of hands to kind of get a measure across the room. So this is for intuitive. So this is for the intuitive solution. You'll check to see if your mathematical solution is correct. But this is for the intuitive solution. So just a show of hands, your pirate A, How many people in the class gave yourself the most gold? So how many ended up with the most gold? All right. Of those that gave themselves the most gold, how many gave Pirate B the second most gold? All right. And how many people gave Pirate C, or tied for the second? All right. And how many people gave Pirate C the third most, or tied for third most? Okay. So we have a pattern here where Pirate A was getting the most. Did anybody not give themselves the most? Anybody in that boat? Okay. And then if you didn't give yourself the most, did B end up with the most or tied with the most? No? Okay. So we do have a pattern here amongst some of the ones that agree where A got the most, B second most or tied for second most, C third most or tied for third most, and if we kept following, probably D and E got the second least and the least. So we're going to see that that intuitive feeling takes into account certain heuristics, certain kind of ways of behaving that we use to solve this problem. But before we get to that, let's take a look at what the actual solution is. So this is the mathematical solution. This is what you should do in order to maximize your gold take. So the best way to solve this, or the most straightforward way to solve this problem, is to work backwards. And a lot of problems work this way, right? This is a bit of that restructuring, where instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to represent this as a problem with 5 pirates, you say, you know what, forget it, I'm going to represent it as a problem with 2 pirates. What happens in that case? So let's take a look that only Pirate D and Pirate E remain. Let's say that everybody else got thrown off the boat. At this time, they still got to allocate the gold. But now it's down to Pirate D and E, and Pirate D is the one that's proposing it. So Pirate D at this point is going to propose that Pirate E gets 0 coins, and Pirate D is going to take the whole 100. And they're going to put it to a vote, and Pirate E is going to say nay, and Pirate D is going to say aye, and it's going to pass, right? It's going to carry. So the result is going to be that the vote is a tie, but remember, in a tie vote, the allocation carries, and the final allocation is going to be that Pirate E gets nothing, and Pirate D gets 100 coins. So this is a great situation for Pirate D, but it's a horrible situation for Pirate E. So at this point, Pirate E is thinking to himself, I shouldn't have downvoted that last offer because I threw Pirate C overboard. And all I would need in order to change my mind and not kill Pirate C, not downvote Pirate C, is a little bit better than 0 coins. So Pirate E is rational. He knows he cannot let the vote get down to just him and Pirate D. So he will take anything better than 0 coins in the previous allocation. So Pirate E knows this because he's rational. Pirate D knows this because he's rational. Importantly, Pirate C knows this because he's rational, or she's rational as well. So since Pirate C is rational, there he is, assume that only 3 of them remain. So we go back 1 step. Pirate C is going to propose, and remember, Pirate E knows if he downvotes this, he's going to get 0 the next time. Pirate C knows this, so he says, all right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Pirate E 1 coin. I'm going to give Pirate D 0 coins. They get nothing. I'm going to keep myself 99 coins. So the pirates look at this, and D says, you know what? If I downvote this, I get 100 coins next time. So by the rules that we set up, D is going to downvote it. E knows that if he downvotes it, he gets 0 the next time. He's greedy. He'll take the 1 coin. So the vote is that Pirate E is going to say, yeah, I'll take that 1 coin because if I downvote this, I get 0. Pirate D is going to say no because if I downvote this, I get 100 coins. Why would I? If I vote for this, I don't get my 100 coins. You know what I'm trying to say. Pirate C says aye because he's a proposer. The result, you get a majority, the allocation stands, and the final allocation, Pirate E gets 1 coin, Pirate D gets 0 coins, and Pirate C ends up with 99 coins. So good result for Pirate C, better result for Pirate E, Pirate D, horrible result for them. So Pirate D is rational, and he knows that he cannot let it get down to just 3 pirates. That's horrible for Pirate D. So he's going to take anything better than 0 gold coins in the previous allocation. Does So now we bring back pirate B. So she is rational, and she knows how the pirates are going to operate. So now when she is proposing, she is going to propose, all right, pirate E, you get 0 coins. I don't need you to vote. You're going to get 0 coins. Pirate D, I'm going to give you 1 coin. Because if you downvote this, you're going to get 0 the next time. So pirate D is going to say, yeah, I'm going to vote for 1 coin. 1 is better than 0. Pirate C gets 0. Surprisingly, nothing. And pirate B says, I'm going to make off with 99 coins. So what happens is E is going to say, no way. C is going to say, no way. I'd rather kill you than get 0 because I'll get more the next time. Pirate D says, if I downvote this, I'm going to get 0 on the next allocation. So I'm going to vote yes. Pirate B is like, definitely yes. So the vote is going to be nay for pirate E. Pirate D says aye. Pirate C says nay. Pirate B says aye. The result is a tie. Allocation stands. And the final tally is pirate E gets 0. Pirate D gets 1. C gets 0. And B gets 99 coins. We got one more level. Pirate C is rational, along with Pirate E. They're also rational. And Pirate C knows that he cannot let the vote get down to just the 4 of them, because then he gets absolutely nothing. So he will take anything the time before in order to avoid this possible vote. So Pirate A knows this as well, because she is rational. So when you work backwards and you end up with the first allocation, that all 5 pirates remain, Pirate A is going to propose, you know what, E, you get 1 coin. Because on the next allocation, you're going to get 0. So 1 is better than 0, you'll vote for me. Pirate D, you get 0 coins. I'm not going to give you any coins. Vote nay. Pirate C, you get 1 coin. And if you downvote this and throw me off, you're going to get 0 the next time. So she gets Pirate C's vote. Pirate B, surprisingly, gets nothing. And Pirate A walks away with 98 coins. And when they put that to a vote, Pirate E says aye, D says nay, C says aye, B says nay, and of course A is going to say aye. We got 3-2, that's a majority, allocation stands, and your final allocation, your prescriptive decision-making allocation is that Pirate E gets 1 coin, Pirate D gets 0, C gets 1, B gets 0, and Pirate A walks away with all the coins. So just a show of hands, did anybody get that solution? Anybody walking out of here with 98 coins? Okay. And one other check. So you can also analyze this for the minimum requirements for survival. And the minimum requirements for survival is that Pirate E gets at least 1 coin and Pirate C gets at least 1 coin. That is your minimum requirements for survival. So how many people survived? How many people got 1 coin from Pirate E and 1 coin from Pirate C? We got survivors in here. All right, so you satisfied the first one. Weren't able to satisfy the second thing, the maximizing requirement. So one of the problems with this, or one of the reasons why this is such a challenging problem, is because mathematically it's very difficult, right? Mathematically it's very difficult to kind of say and work backwards. You got to restructure it and say, I'll start with 2. What would 2 do? I'll start with 3. What did 3, what would I do with 3? Even then, it's kind of hard to keep track of. You can see I got mixed up a couple of times, and I got it written down up here. So anyways, it's difficult. So a lot of times when decision-making is difficult, we go to other heuristics. We go to other strategies that we use in order to help make our decision. And one of the strategies that has been used in this pirate question, so this question has been studied. One of the heuristics that is used is our heuristic of fairness. We bring fairness into the situation. And if you gave Pirate A the most, well, let's go a step further. If you gave Pirate B more than C, C more than D, D more than E, because of that heuristic of fairness, they're more senior, they should get paid more in this allocation, then you were leaning on that heuristic when we were unable to get to the prescriptive solution. So you'll see that this solution here violates all sorts of rules of fairness, right? B, the second most senior pirate in the gang, is getting 0. C is making more than B. That's like somebody working at a company for 20 years, making 70,000, and then the new hire who does the exact same job gets 150,000, right? You would look at that and say, ooh, that's not fair. This violates fairness. That's one of the reasons why it's hard to get to this prescriptive solution. All right, any questions about the pirate challenge and the prescriptive versus descriptive solution? All right, so we're going to end today with a look at another one of these situations called the dollar auction. So this is a situation where you are in an auction, and up for auction is $100. So the value of the top prize is very clear. It's $100, right? Up for auction. But this auction has a slight little twist to the rules. The rules of the auction: starting bid, you're going to start at $5, right? That is a bargain. $5 buys you $100. You do that all day. So the starting bid is $5. The minimum bid increment is also $5. So none of this. I bid $5 and a penny, $5 and 2 pennies. But if you win the auction at $5, you're going to make $95. So it's a great bargain. You're literally making $95. However, the kink in this auction, the kind of little twist that makes it interesting for a psychologist, is that the $100 goes to the highest bidder, like in any auction, and they pay the amount they bid. However, the second highest bidder must also pay the amount that they bid. So whoever comes in second, whatever their final bid was, if they're like, I'll pay $30, and then the other person goes, I'll pay $35, and it wins at $35, the winner pays $35, they get their $100 bill. The second place individual pays $30 and gets nothing. So that is the twist here, and they pay the money, but they don't get any sort of gain. So this is a dollar auction, and what we're going to see now is that in this auction, rational decisions in this auction get very irrational. They lead to very irrational behavior. So completely rational decisions get to or make completely irrational behaviors. And this is something we need to understand, because sometimes we look at human behavior and we're like, that is totally irrational. Why is this person doing that? What an irrational behavior. And oftentimes it is produced by completely rational behavior, and you'll see an example right here. All right, so what happens in the dollar auction? Well, let's say that the first bidder bids $5, right? And then the second bidder bids $10. First off, notice that this first bid of $5, completely rational. It is completely irrational for somebody to walk up to you and you know they're legitimate and they say, I will trade you this $100 for $5. You're coming out ahead, you're coming out $95 ahead. That is rational behavior. And again, I know every time I describe this, my mind immediately goes to like counter examples where you're like, well, maybe it's forfeit, maybe this person's not on the up and up, maybe this is entrapment. Let's go with the idea that it's completely on the up and up. $5 bid gets you 100. Notice second bidder comes in at $10. Completely rational, right? Rational to pay $10 for a $100 situation, for a $100 payout. So what happens when this occurs? Well, the result, if it ended here, if the auctioneer was like, any more bids, no more bids, sold for $10, well, what would happen is that the first bidder would be out $5. The second bidder would be up $90, right? They pay $10, they get $100 back. So that's the situation if it ends right at that moment. So the first bidder at that point is faced with a decision. Do they rebid? And notice that if they quit, they lose $5. But if they bid again, then there's going to be a bid of 15, and if they win at 15, they get $85. So notice, out of the two of these decisions, the rational decision is to bid once more, because this decision, you lose $5. This decision, you gain $85. That's the rational decision. So they bid $15, and if the auction ended at that point, the results would be that the first bidder now is up $85, good rational decision. Second bidder, on the other hand, is now down $10. They've lost $10 in this auction. So now it goes to the second bidder. What should they do? Well, if they just quit, again, they have two choices. If they just quit, minus $10. If, on the other hand, they bid again, they go up to $20, plus $80. So again, the rational decision, the correct, prescriptive, logical decision is to bid once more and go up to $80. So we're going to fast forward this to a bid of 85. So they keep going back and forth. At $85, first bidder goes, I'm going to bid 85. 85 for $100. Second bidder comes in and says 90. I'll pay $90. The result, if it ended here, first bidder out 85. Second bidder up 10. So it's still a rational decision. $90 for 100. Absolutely, I do that every day. So second bidder says, all right, yeah, I'm coming in. I'll make $10. Goes back to the first bidder now. And they have to decide, do I quit and lose $85? Or do I bid $95 and make $5? Once again, rational decision is going to be to bid, right, out of these two. Yep.
Is that still considered a rational decision because you're not considering the implications of what will happen after you do? You're only considering the implications of what happened up till this point.
That's something to consider in terms of, that's actually, you're absolutely right. One of the big rational decisions would be at the beginning of this auction, not getting involved. In fact, there's one move that you can make in this auction that will guarantee that you can bid and come out ahead, and we'll see what that is in just a moment. But that's actually one of the challenges, especially when you get outside of these sort of hypothetical situations. Finding the prescriptive decision-making solution is sometimes very challenging. So you'll notice in the pirate auction, we set up very specific rules, like this is what they do. As soon as you throw in real pirates, all of a sudden that question becomes massively difficult. And so does this one. As soon as you're like, well, what about, thinking about the future, thinking about what other people are going to do, it becomes difficult because if other people are rational, as soon as you bid $5, they're all going to say, I'm out, right? If they're all rational. But what if they're not behaving rational? Or what if they, so the prescriptive becomes very difficult. So you're absolutely right. In this case, we are narrowing our focus to just the current decision. All right, so if this is the case, first bidder bids 95, second bidder bids 90. Results, first bidder ends up with $5. Second bidder is out $90. Once again, goes now to the second bidder. They have a choice. They can either quit right now, lose $90, or they can bid 100 for $100 and lose nothing. Once again, rational choice. Avoid the loss by bidding $100. So they would, at this point, make the rational decision to bid $100. So the second bidder bids 100. So far, not really too irrational from either of these two bidders. But what happens next? The results, if it ended here, first bidder is out 95. Second bidder is out $0. So now what happens? The first bidder takes a look at this and says, you know what, if I quit right now, I'm out $95. But if I bid 105, I'm only out $5. So once again, you have a decision. Do something where you lose 95, or option B, and you only lose $5. Again, the rational decision, maximize your gains, minimize your losses, bid 105. And now we have a completely, from the outside, irrational long-term decision, which is you're paying $105 for $100. That's crazy. And the results now is going to be that the first bidder loses 5 and the second bidder loses 100. But notice, it now goes back to the second bidder. And this keeps going. The second bidder says, if I quit now, I'm out $100. If I bid 110, I'm only out 10. So once again, the rational decision in that moment is to bid. And you just keep going and going and going. And this could rationally go on forever, where you could get the extremely counterintuitive, extremely irrational looking behavior of bidding 200. I'll pay 200 for that $100. I'll pay 210. I'll make it 220. And you're sitting there going, for $100, you're paying that much. But notice again, in the current situation, it makes sense now for this first bidder to come over the top and say, $115, that's what I want to bid. And do we have it here? Oh yeah, so how can you end the bidding war? How can you actually outsmart this situation? Well, the way that you end the bidding war is you bid $95 more than the last bid. So if you needed to call an end to this, then you could say, all right, you just bid 100, 195, that's my bid. Because if you have this situation, let's say the first bidder bids $20. If the second bidder then comes over the top and says, you know what, 115. Well, in that case, the result is that the first bidder loses 20, the second bidder loses 15, and notice what happens to that first bidder. They now have an option. Do I quit now and lose 20? Or do I come over the top and bid 120 and also lose 20? So at this point, there's no reason to choose between those two alternatives. They would just choose not to quit, and the auction would be over. So there's no gains from further bidding. The auction is over. So the best strategy, if you're ever faced with this completely hypothetical, probably never going to happen to you strategy, is come in with a bid of 95 right at the beginning. So right at the beginning, when the auctioneer says, all right, auction is open, $100 bills up for auction, if you just go, boom, 95. At that point, you'll shut down the bids. You'll have a gain of 5, not a lot, but you'll have a gain. And that's the rational move if you're fighting against other rational individuals. For all you know, there's going to be somebody else saying, I'm not giving them $95, $5 gain. So you'd be surprised. I'll just a real quick little aside. There is a problem called, I think it's called like the dictator problem. And it is much like the pirate allocation, but played between two real humans, where you have like $100 and you are the dictator and you have to decide on an allocation. And it is a one-time only allocation. This is it. And if your allocation passes, you both get money. If your allocation is thrown out, the $100 is gone, right? So that's the situation. Two humans, this person is making a decision about what goes with the $100. If it's downvoted, if this person doesn't agree, the money's gone. Rationally, what you would, well, but you're trying to get as much as you can because you're the one coming up with the allocation. But rationally, what you would do in this situation is you would say, all right, I'm going to take $99 and you're going to get $1. Because if you downvote this, you get 0, right? So $1 is better than 0. A rational person would take the $1. What scientists have found, what psychologists have found, is that if you give this person less than 30%, they will throw it away because it just violates a sense of fairness. It violates that idea of you're benefiting from your position of power. They will throw it away. So if you go, I'm going to take $70 and I'm going to give you 30, they will say, I would rather see that $30 burn than take it.
That would be
And yeah, exactly. That would be me as well. We're human. I'm not going to do that. You know. But again, an irrational behavior because we're taking into account other situations. All right, so let's end today with a look at an application of this dollar auction because it is a hypothetical situation. But situations like this actually come up a lot in business practices, especially when someone's gain is another person's loss. So you'll notice the dollar auction, bidder number one's gain is bidder number two's loss, right? They're losing money on this. And that oftentimes happens in business. And there's this really nice case study in TV back in the day when there was 3 networks. So back in the day, you had a choice of 3 channels. You could either watch ABC, you could watch CBS, or you could watch NBC. And what would happen is, this was before home video. This was when buying broadcast rights for a movie was a very lucrative business, right? Having the broadcast rights to put a film on TV that you cannot watch by going to a video store, I'm dating myself, by going and streaming it on Netflix. You can't watch it. Your only choice was to watch it on one of these channels. So this happened for the movie The Poseidon Adventure. So The Poseidon Adventure had big stars. It was a disaster film where the Poseidon ship turned over. So you can see it here, it turned over. And then it's a survival epic. And it had massive stars. It had Gene Hackman, Ernest Borgnine. Where is he? It had Roddy, there he is, Roddy McDowell from Planet of the Apes. It even had Leslie Nielsen in a dramatic role. I mean, Leslie Nielsen in a dramatic role? Surely you can't be serious.
I don't know what that is.
You should.
I am serious.
I'll try.
Don't call me
There we go. All right, I got it. So, if you don't know the reference, this is literally the first time that worked. If you don't know the reference for Surely You Can't Be Serious, it's from Airplane.
I am serious. Now don't call me Shirley.
All right. So anyway, so what happened in the Poseidon Adventure? It's nicely done, though. It's the first time. All right. So what happened in the Poseidon Adventure? Well, it was a huge movie. So this kind of also shows you how movies have changed. Poseidon Adventure came out in 1972. By 1974, all right, after 2 years of being released in theaters, it was the sixth highest grossing movie of all time. So, massive hit. And what happened was ABC, CBS, and NBC, they were called by the people that held the rights for the Poseidon Adventure, they were called for a one-night auction for the Poseidon Adventure. Now, this was a little different than what they did before. What they did before is you would just send in your bid secretly. And they would take a look at the three of them, and they would say, all right, NBC bid the most, so we're going to give it to NBC, right? But this was the first time that they said, send 3 executives, and we're going to have you guys in a room, and we'll just have an auction where you can bid whatever you want. So, why is this like a dollar auction? Well, the gain is going to be the ad revenue that you can generate during this movie. And movies like this were huge. Goldfinger, the James Bond movie, when it was broadcast for the first time on TV, had 49% of the viewing audience turning in. So 49% of every single TV was watching this one movie. So the ad revenue that you could charge during these movies was huge. It was a big time gain for the network. What about the loss, right? What if you don't get to broadcast that movie? Well, if you're not broadcasting the movie, nobody's watching your station. So you're going to lose that ad revenue, right? So no, if a company is saying, oh yeah, we heard the Poseidon Adventure is on ABC, we're pulling our ads from NBC from that night because nobody's gonna watch it. Or NBC is gonna have to say, you know what, we'll give you like 50% off for a 30-second spot. You guys get a massive break. So they're gonna lose a lot of ad revenue due to that competition. So we have our dollar auction. So what happened? Well, this comes from Robert Wood. He was president of CBS Television in 1974. So this is his account of what happened. Now I'll read it. He goes, we were very rational at the start. We priced the movie out in terms of what it could bring in for us, then allowed a certain value on top of that for exploitation. So they had a number set, and they were like, this is the most that we're going to go in on. And the fever of the thing caught us. Like a guy who lost his mind, I kept bidding. Finally, I went to 3.2 million. And there came a moment when I said to myself, good grief, if I get it, what the heck am I going to do with it? So because of this situation, gain for some, loss for others, it went to the point where it was way more than it was actually worth. He goes, when ABC finally topped me, my main feeling was relief. So he got out of that auction commitment when ABC came over the top. And the result, Barry Diller, vice president for primetime programming at ABC, he ended up paying $3.1 million. They took a $1 million loss on the purchase. They lost $1 million, much like the person that came in second on the dollar auction. No, actually, much like the person who came in first on the dollar auction, but paid $200 for a $100 bill. Barry Diller paid $3.1 million, lost $1 million on the deal, and this was the last time the networks had an open auction. So the next movie that came around and said, we're doing an open auction, all 3 networks came together and said, no, we're not doing an open auction, because it sets up that situation. So yeah, so again, dollar auction situation, gain for some, loss for others, and just be aware that if you are in that situation, if you are in a situation where somebody's gain is not just going to leave somebody else with at the level 0, but is actually going to cause them to lose revenues, to lose value, get prepared for some craziness, because that's a dollar auction situation where rational decisions at the time can lead to massively irrational decisions in the end. Any final questions on this before we wrap it up? All right, so that is it for today. So next class, final class, so get ready for that, and I will see you all next time.